Planning an event and wondering how you can give your attendees the best experience possible? Take advantage of customized meetings with Hilton that make it easier than ever to incorporate health, wellness, and great breaks. Hilton will help you build an extraordinary meeting that attendees will remember. To book your next meeting or event, go to meetings.hilton.com.
Are you followers?
Okay, so we're gonna probably add
Welcome to Gather Geeks, a podcast by BizBash, the place where people passionate about meetings and events come together. Here are your hosts, BizBash CEO David Adler and Editor-in-Chief Beth Cormanick.
Hi, David.
Hey, Beth, here we are, another Gather Geeks podcast.
Our guest today is Heather Reed, CEO and founder of Planner Protect. She's a consultant for event contracts with an eye towards saving event planners money and helping them avoid risk. She also has a knack for translating legalese to layman terms. David, isn't part of an event planner's job to know how to read a contract?
You would think so, but my experience is that most people hate doing that. I don't know what your experience is in this, but you think that everybody would be an expert, but it glazes people's eyes over, especially the type of people that do event planning in many cases. So while there are these great logistical planners that really look at every detail, I would say the majority don't. That's why today's podcast is like the insurance policy of insurance policies.
Well, much of this conversation focuses on venue contracts, but the concepts can be applied for any kind of supplier and service provided for events that's governed by a contract. Heather's going to share some specific language to look out for in a contract, as well as a guiding philosophy to how to approach contracts and changing the terms to protect both parties. Let's take a listen.
Okay, so Heather, we're here. I just saw you speak on contracts and how you save planners money by actually reading their contracts for them and giving them not legal advice, but giving them the business advice to help negotiate better contracts.
Yes.
Tell us what you actually do. Is that correct? And give us a sense of what your work product is when somebody says, I want to hire you.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. Planner Protect really is about informing an event host. I'm an advocate for the event host, first and foremost, how to reach a savvy, protective contract. And as you said, it's not through legal wording. It is working with the venue, who most venues have an inventory of clauses to access. It is knowing the questions to ask to get to a clause that protects the interests and the needs of the event host and the venue. So my end product to a client is a written report that literally starts at the very first letter of the contract and ends 26 pages later with the very last word. And I look at every single clause and I take apart the words, I do the math, I check the dates, I will go and do a floor plan of the venue, and to see if from a meeting planner's perspective, can we create efficiencies rather than meeting space rental? Things like that fresh eyes bring so much value.
Is it are they fresh eyes, or are they the only eyes in many cases?
Okay, well, they are a combination, I would say. Fresh eyes for sure, but I know that contracts are one of those things that planners are so inundated with responsibilities every day. I equate event planning to driving in a blizzard with your bright lights on. You just don't know where to look, and contracts take hours. And a lot of planners don't have hours. And so it's literally check the dates, the rates, the space, and let's get it off the desk.
So what's the top line savings that you talk about in terms of like the bigger picture? Like what would make an event planner's eyes pop out of their head when you say how much you save?
So my tract over the last 5 years is on average a contract would save anywhere from $27,000 to $35,000 in both a combination of actual savings and avoided risk. So actual savings are things like looking for some reduced food and beverage minimum. It's looking for meeting space efficiencies. It's looking for concessions. Avoided risk comes in negotiating really solid cancellation terms where damages are owed. And it's taking things like negotiating based on profit, not on revenue. It's being able to say, if I owe $100,000 minimum, I owe you profit. Legally, I owe the venue profit. I don't owe them revenue. And it's really informing the event host and giving them the questions to ask to really negotiate to get to those savings. So our track record is just shy of $8.5 million in avoided risk that we've been able to put back in the client's pocket, both in cash and in avoided savings.
So if you have a client, an end user, a brand, a company, et cetera, and you have a third-party planner, where is the true responsibility, and where do you see the biggest lack of knowledge? Is it in the third-party planner? Is it in the corporation that is ultimately paying the bill? Like, where does the buck stop on this?
Well, my talk just addressed the fact that I believe our event hosts that hire us as professionals are looking to us to be the wise counsel and the savvy negotiators and really masterful at contracting. I think we absolutely cannot replace legal counsel, absolutely not. But I think we also need to come to the table far better versed in negotiation tactics and what to look for.
Well, the lawyer is not your business partner. The lawyer is your lawyer.
No, and actually, in fact, with the corporations that we've worked with, what I hear from those that have access to legal counsel internally is that either they can't get the time and attention that they need from legal, or hospitality is not a banking lawyer or a manufacturing lawyer. Hospitality law is entirely different, and so they're kind of out of their element. So yes, they can look at the really, really nitty-gritty things of protection, but they're not looking at what a meeting planner would look at in making a balanced, good, thorough contract.
So you're actually saying that there is a risk in the idea that that the corporate planner may not be the corporate lawyer may not be the right lawyer to actually vet something properly.
Right, and I think in the United States, you're blessed to have hospitality lawyers that share what they know, and I'm just blown away by how much they write and how much they teach. Here in Canada, we do not. I cannot think of a single name of a Canadian hospitality lawyer that stands out and really speaks out and teaches. And so we have a real dearth of knowledge here that we need to address to be as savvy as our counterparts on the other side of the table.
And so let's move a little bit into the pitfalls. Like,
yes.
What are let's take 5 or 6
Okay.
that people would understand. What is the number one issue that you see in your world when someone gives you a contract from the planner side?
That is a really good question. How long have you got?
We want to keep it short so people can don't glaze over.
Yeah.
We want to know enough that they can hire you.
Okay, well, all right, that's the deal. I think there are a couple of things. Termination is one in our industry where when an event has been impacted by something beyond our control. That's one that people don't think about. What are both sides? What could impact our event? And that's a clause that is rarely negotiated with the planner or the event host in mind. Cancellation is one that, and it's different than termination. Cancellation, we find venues always protect themselves against the client canceling, but rarely do contracts protect the client when the venue wants to cancel. So that to me is right off the top.
On purpose.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Those contracts have been curated by lawyers to protect the best interests of the venue.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So it's not their job to protect us. I would say concessions are one that I think they're whether they're earned or whether they are, the venue has the right to revoke them.
Okay, English, please.
Okay, so if someone was to say, we offer you 1 in 40, so if you pick up 40 guest rooms, we're going to offer you, the event host, 1 complimentary one. So that's a concession that someone might ask for. what I find with planners is that they allow language that says, if you don't meet your standards of performance, so you're not meeting your food and beverage, you're not meeting your guest room, things like that, then we have the right as a venue to revoke those concessions. And yet, what planners don't understand is that when there is attrition, so you are paying because you underperformed, then you've made that property whole. Those are your concessions. The venue should not have the right to pull those back. So there's that piece that's missing for planners. And that's an important one. If you're counting on having so many complimentary rooms, you're counting on, free Wi-Fi for your attendees, things like that, and those are revoked because of language. That's sad.
Yeah.
So I think attrition, and as I said, that's underperformance. So when a client comes in and they're contracted to meet a certain minimum,
minimum meaning they're going to get X number of rooms.
X number of rooms, or an X dollar value worth of food and beverage for an event. When a client comes in and does not meet those targets, then paying the difference between what they actually did and what they were supposed to do, that gap is called attrition. And it's the planner that needs to know how to negotiate that attrition, because it's not just a straight mathematical, here's what I was supposed to pay, this is what I did pay, the difference is what I owe. That's not the case. And here in Canada, particularly, we don't understand the concept of we pay the profit, not revenue.
Can you re-emphasize what that means?
That means, so for example, guest rooms. The profit margin on guest rooms for a hotel, for example, the industry standard is anywhere between 70 and 85%. So if you had a $100 guest room, the venue would expect to generate $70 to $85 profit on that guest room. Well, if we're in a situation of attrition, most contracts are worded that we would owe them the full $100 on every room that we did not consume. But in fact, what we owe them legally and as a business law is that we owe the profit that they would have generated if we had actually sold that room to one of our attendees.
So do you recommend changing the language from revenue to profit?
Profit, absolutely.
And that is a game changer right there.
Absolutely. And your American system is very much built and aware of that one distinct difference. We are behind, and I'm on a mission here in Canada to just that one change can mean so much between owing $100 times 30 rooms or $70 for 30 rooms. That gap for a lot of clients means that they don't get to add that frill, or they don't get to add that little special element.
Okay, what's next?
What's next? I'm in building mode, right? I believe, at least here in Canada, this role for planners, a support role, is new. Trying to show someone the value, just like we onboard AV supplier and we onboard a registration system and we onboard decor. I want planners to know that they can onboard a contract consultant that will help them. I believe planners are project managers. We're not needing to be experts in everything. We need to be if you don't have resources, but if you have resources, then you build a team. And one of the team members, I want someone like myself to come in and help them with that contract.
Well, you're showing that you can control revenue for the business in ways that are completely obvious in many cases, that somebody should be watching it, because most people don't do that, right?
No, and it's not that they're...
Would you say that 50, 60, 80, what percentage don't even look at contracts and just sign them because they're not professionals, they're new in the industry or whatever? Would you say that there's a huge issue with us?
Yes. Yes, and I'll boldly proclaim that, yes. I think there are a lot, for professional planners, I think time is an absolute critical factor. We are so pressured. For those that are a DIY type, that are signing contracts for weddings, or they're signing contracts for bar mitzvahs, or whatever the case may be, they are absolutely going in blind. And they are risking their shirt because that contract is curated to protect the venue. So
So what does a person do who's a DIY person? Like, how do they're not even going to know to hire you. They're getting screwed.
Yes, potentially, right?
Potentially.
And part of my message today was we are complacent because events come off every day.
Oh, yeah,
and rarely
thousands.
does something go wrong, right?
Right.
But it's when it goes wrong that we need to be protected. It's not if, it's just when. So I have not focused on the DIY. My legacy piece is my professional,
Right.
is my own profession.
Right.
And I think we need to start there. I can't take on the whole beast. I truly just want to make a shift in our own profession.
But I think that through doing this podcast today, there's a dent that we're making. I mean, the experiential business, the agency businesses that are spending money on events like crazy are probably not even looking at anything like this.
I would agree with you. I actually just had a wonderful conversation with a young gal from a marketing agency that is doing events. And when I was telling her about Planner Protect, she went, OMG, had no idea. And there's a lot of that. You assume that things are okay, and do we read every contract for real estate? Do we read every contract? When you sign up for a telecommunications service? No, we don't. And it's the same thing when we're planning events. We don't read those contracts, and yet the liability is completely shifted to the one that signs the contract.
And is it because the venues, lawyers are smarter, or they're just more adept at sort of mitigating their risk?
In my experience, and I can only say from my own career as a planner, and then the last 5 years helping others, in our Canadian market particularly, every supplier contract is curated by a lawyer, but rarely do clients have it in their budget for legal review.
Right.
So it's not that one is smarter than the other. I think there's just an awareness that we should be adding that into our budget.
Right.
And it's just an automatic non-negotiable.
We're going to take a little break and come right back after this message from Hilton. So when's the big event? Hilton's here for planners with their exclusive customized meetings. Become a wow maker and save time by letting Hilton help you present an extraordinary event, one that leads to memorable and meaningful connections. Visit meetings.hilton.com and let Hilton help you. So what is the difference between the independent venue, I know you talked about that today a little bit, and the hotel venue, and what you're seeing in the you were kind of shocked at
Yes.
the research that you did on the independent venue versus the hotel venue?
Yeah, well, yes, and even those, and it was funny because I thought, well, those were curated by lawyers too. When we look at the clauses that carry the most risk, which are the indemnification, and which is a promise to pay if legal proceedings are involved. And then there's termination, which is an act that is acted upon you, and cancellation. And I found in these 12 unconventional venues, which included things like a ski resort, an amusement park, museums, there was a library, a music hall, that even in some cases, they didn't protect themselves from things going sideways, from indemnification or termination and things. And so I found that shocking, first of all, that, but I think that speaks to our complacency here, that, it'll work out.
Right.
But it may not. And our culture is changing. Our culture is very much changing, and we're using big conglomerate contracts that, are really well written in the hotel industry, particularly. It's being gobbled up, and they're, standardized contracts, and they are well crafted. I gave the example of 6 little words that, to a layperson would mean nothing, but when you look at them and you read them and you think, what does that mean?
What were the 6 words?
Oh, the venue has the right to.
And what does to explain how that impacts?
Well, okay, so one of my stories is a client that allowed in his contract the wording, the venue has the right to move his meeting space to an equivalent space. And what he ended up with was not a ballroom, but a wedding tent out in the parking lot. And the judgment indicated that it wasn't about the amenities of his meeting space, it was about the square footage. And so when you see the words, the venue has the right to, that is a scary place to be, because there's no collaboration, there's no discussion, there's no mutual decision. It's the venue has the right to without discussion.
What should it be?
It could, and again, it's about language, but the essence of it is that you want to ask for discussion. You want to ask for collaboration. You want to ask for
in the contract
that the venue, unless it's of an emergency nature where people's lives are at risk, they need to have unilateral right to do something. But if it's around moving your meeting space, if it's around, it escapes me right now about another situation, but it's removing the right of the venue to just act on their own merits. It's saying, this is a partnership and you need to consult me before you move forward with something. The other one is the client must notify the venue. Those are another 6 little words that have big impact, because if a client's expectations, they have to do something for the venue and they don't do it, then that sets them up for damages. But yet, did you really read it?
And what should that be?
Well, again. It could be, and I don't know what it should be, but what it could be is that the venue needs to notify the client that there is a decision to be made, or the venue has, there's ways of working.
Make it dual.
Yes, thank you. It's collaboration, right? We're in this together. So in the case that I gave today, it was about the client needed to notify the venue of wanting to take advantage of attrition. Well, he got stuck with a bill. But the wording allowed the venue to do exactly what they did. The client wasn't happy, but the client missed those 6 words that said he had a responsibility to notify the venue of something. So it's just the nuances that I pick out and say, okay, are you aware that if you sign this as is, these are your responsibilities, and this is what they're saying to you, that you agree to X, Y, Z. So it's actually, I had a lady say, you're an interpreter, and I'm like, that's exactly what it is. I'm an interpreter of legalese to layman.
And, well, you're the whisperer.
Perhaps.
But this applies to every part of our industry.
It certainly does.
Photography.
Yes.
Videography. Augmented reality, all the E's, the Y's.
Absolutely, yes. Every element of our particular industry, I believe, starts with a good contract and may end with a contract. Absolutely, everything we do, services, decor, just everything.
So how do you turn what you do and scale what you do so there are other people? You cannot possibly be, you will be so busy if everybody decides they need to like your kind of service. Are there other people doing what you do?
Well, actually, okay, so there are different, I'm not aware of someone that is actually just hanging out their shingle saying, I am a contract consultant. I've looked for them because I'd love to find other peeps, but there are absolutely other types. So site selection is one way. They are focused on the contract. They get you the venue, and part of their expertise is on contracts. That's a different business model than what I have. So if you don't want to...
They get a commission...
From the property, correct. And,
yes.
and that's great. And I just have never been a part of that business model. But they obviously, that's all they work with is contracts. So they have some inherent skills in negotiating and acting on behalf of the client. The legal people, obviously they do. Otherwise, it really does come down to the planners, and there aren't a lot of us that really are. I'm not an arrogant person. I absolutely don't want to come across that way. But I've invested heavily in building expertise, and so there aren't a lot of us that take it to the same depth. So.
Maybe there's we should create a tribe of people that they can start connecting, and because I do believe that this has to be taught in schools in really efficient ways.
Absolutely. When I first started and Planner Protect was kind of that, just an idea in my head, I was encouraged to do a quick environmental scan across Canada. So I hired someone to look at the colleges, the post-secondary colleges and universities. And at that time, there was not one full course in an event management hospitality course that was taught on contracts or contract negotiations. And to me, when it's the underpinning of everything that we do, that needs to be 101, 201, 301.
But you do see this, like a lot of conferences have, we're going to do a thing on contracts, but it's kind of lightweight, right?
Oh, you can't possibly dig deep. And actually, that was my greatest challenge creating a 35-minute talk, was really keeping it high enough, intriguing enough, but you can't dig deep on anything.
Right.
You could be an hour on each of my 52 points, like really literally, and hours on some of them, because of the nuances in the way, the thinking and the construction of a really good clause. So
your 52 points, these are all the things you talked about that earlier. Are there, what is the last thing you ended up putting on the list of 52?
My list is actually an A to Z list. I don't actually have a formal, like the top 10 list kind of thing. I don't have it.
Right, but there's something you added recently that you've just discovered?
I would say it's the new angle of attrition, that new one that that the client just got caught on, that it's, yes, we've given you your 80% attrition, but now the client needs to invoke that attrition. The client needs to say, I want that attrition at some point. In my 25 years, if you got the 80% attrition, it was a given. You just get it. You get to the event and they say, as long as you've met 80% pickup, we're good. Now they've nuanced it to say, look, now you have to tell us if you want that 80% pickup, or the minimum, which I find a little sneaky.
How do you deal with RevPAR and contracts now with people going in the hotel world, so in the weeds here a little bit, where people go around the contract to get the RevPAR rates, the lower rates from hotels tonight and things like that at the same places?
That I'm out of my league on.
I assume that's a business issue.
I can't speak to that at all.
And did you also watch the Netflix Fire Festival documentary?
No, I did not know it was out. I actually followed very carefully the actual event and how it unfolded and some of the articles about it afterwards, but I didn't know there was a documentary until it came here. So now that this is done, I will absolutely be watching.
Yeah, you will be horrified.
I'm sure I will.
But is it? But I was horrified as well. But I also, from a contracting point of view, realize that people that are marketing people are even more at risk than the planning community, because they are dealing with bigger dollars that can easily go off the rails so much more easily.
I think there's a big opportunity for our industry to really step up and say, this is why you want to hire a professional. And what is that saying about if you want to save money, hire an amateur, and and then you'll find out how expensive an amateur is, kind of thing. I'm paraphrasing wordsmithing, but it really truly is. People, and I find this about contracts, people almost need to make a mistake before they will really truly sit up and say, I need help. I don't know what I don't know.
So as we end, do you have any thoughts on what's really screwed up with the system entirely? Forget finding the legal problems, but are you seeing something that is really wrong with the way it's working, the whole sort of the industry approach?
I would say that monopolizing the buyouts are not helping us.
So explain what that means.
Well, to me, I'm all about creating balance in a contract. It's not about it's a win for me and it's a loss for you. It's about coming and saying, at the end of the day, we've both met our objectives, finding ways to do that. We don't always get what we want, but we need to get what we need. And I find that I am hearing that there are venues that don't want to come to the table prepared to negotiate. It's our way or the highway.
Because there's so much a monopoly that they're going to just not even care about you.
Yeah, and there are planners that say, well, why bother? And that's
are you
unfortunate
seeing that,
too.
But are you seeing that with the Marriotts of the world? Are they flexible? Are they?
You know what? I will not speak about a brand.
Right.
Every single contract is absolutely unique to that event.
But the big brands, have they sort of put their will in to this is the way it's going to be and this is my way or the highway?
Well, I think every brand presents a draft contract thinking that is the way it's going to be. Yeah. There are people, their sales force, that are willing to have discussions. And one thing I've learned is you don't take the first no. You absolutely, and you need to speak to someone.
How do you do that? How does a event planner get to the second or third no? What do they do?
The number one thing to do is to ask to speak and negotiate with the person that has the power to change the contract.
And who normally is that?
It may very well be a salesperson that is seasoned. It may not be the junior salesperson that is following a script. But I'm all for teaching that junior salesperson, and I've done that on more than one occasion where it's like, I need this, and this is why I need this. I want to work with a salesperson, but the person that also has the leverage to be able to change it. I think that's where planners also need to assert themselves and say, I'm not going to take the first no. This has to be for both of us.
How far up the line usually is it? Is it
Director of sales?
Director of sales.
And there have been cases where I know definitively has gone to the GM, because they're the ones that will make the final decision of whether a clause that has been suggested and what has been, the intent of what we're requesting needs to come from a GM.
So what happens, I'm sorry, I'm asking more than I thought I was going to be done. What happens when it goes to a litigious situation? Is it just go directly to the lawyer when the GM, when there's some sort of infraction? It's being adjudicated by the lawyer, right, of the property?
I would assume so. I luckily, knock on wood, and I'm going to literally knock on wood,
okay, good.
Have not been involved in that front line of it going, but it may be because I'm Canadian.
I don't think so. I think you're tough as nails.
But I know that planners like Joan Eisenstadt, for example, in the States, I know she has been professional witness or key witness for event hosts. I just have not been in that position, so I'm not aware of that. But I know that that's obviously, that's above my expertise for sure.
Okay, so let's end with, how do people get in touch with you? And hopefully they plan more in advance as opposed to when they have to hire you.
My website is plannerprotect.ca, and the CA is, I'm proud because it's Canadian. However, I have worked with American clients and with international, so don't let the CA extension scare you. It's certainly...
So you have .com too.
No, I don't have .com.
Oh, you don't have, okay, you
no,
don't have,
I'm
okay.
strictly .ca.
Okay, .ca, okay.
But I'm not that big yet, David. Through the web, and my email is very simple. It's just heather@plannerprotect.ca. Okay. And really, what I'd love to have is just a conversation. To me, if I can at least shed some light and share something, it's not all about hiring me. It's where can I point you in the right direction? Right. I have a feature on my website. It's a 15-minute complimentary call, because I'd rather talk you through something than feeling you have to hire someone.
Right.
Obviously, I would love to be hired and come alongside and be a partner.
Right.
But that's not my. That's
well,
not
you
my
have
first.
a work product that you actually do.
Yes.
So that they would hire you for.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. I actually had a young gal here today. Can I get your list? And I'm like, that's taken me 25 years to curate, and for a fee, yes.
Right. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much, and we'll look forward to seeing how the world changes based on what you're doing.
Well, thank you, and I have to say, such an honor to be with you. I have looked forward to this event for the specific reasons of meeting you. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
David, we're back in our podcast studio, and now everyone knows to look for the terms "the venue has a right to" and "the client must notify the venue when." Were these things that stuck out to you before?
Oh, I really took mental notes so that I really learned a lot from listening to Heather, and it really made me think how important this is to our industry and every part of life, really, in what you do. And she does it in such a nice way, so you think of it less as a something that's really an awful thing to think about, but she really kind of made it fun, actually.
Right. As an event planner, you want to believe that your venues and suppliers are partners in your success and pulling off an event. But Heather shared some horror stories. I mean, can you even imagine planning a ballroom meeting and having it move to a tent and without even a conversation? Yeah,
well, that's why contracts are good. Contracts are your friend.
It's true.
Most of the time.
Obviously, on that venue's part, it's short-sighted. The venue burned that relationship with the client, and that meeting planner is going to tell her colleagues and friends. But the question that Heather wants us to think about is: was this situation addressed in the contract?
Exactly. Well, it was interesting. I was watching her. She was the keynote at our Go West conference that we had in Edmonton this year, and you watched everybody paying attention to her like their life depended upon it, because they knew that one tip could be the thing that would save their lives completely.
Well, it's like their jobs depend on it,
their
right?
jobs depended on it, their careers depended on it. And it's the kind of thing where those details were the thing that you will pull back from your memory banks one day when you see it, and it will help you tremendously.
Right. So the idea here is to know what to look out for, but if even after this podcast, you're still intimidated by contracts or your eyes glaze over, as you said, David, here's a resource for where to turn.
And there are not many people doing what she's doing, which is what I found really unique about this. So Beth, what is going on at BizBash this spring?
Yeah, we've passed the first day of spring. Happy spring.
Happy spring.
It's a great time to talk about event design. Last week, we published our roundup of design highlights from winter benefits and galas from across North America. We're also covering DIFA's Dining by Design, which is co-located with the Architectural Digest Design Show.
That is always one of my favorites.
Yes. Well, you can get a preview, or anybody can get a preview on our Instagram, and then look for a coverage of that coming up this week.
Great. So before we end our podcast, we always like to thank the people that put it together, just like we like to thank the people that put our events together. So we want to do a nice shout out to Claire Hoffman, who does all the editorial duties for the podcast, and Rebecca Pappas that gets it out there, and Dave Nelson, who is our producer. So thank you for doing all your hard work. We appreciate everything that you do for the podcast. And with that, what do we say, Beth?
Gather on.
Gather on.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. We can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Player FM, Google Play, and Pocket Cast. Be sure to leave us a rating and review. It helps others discover the Gather Geeks podcast. We'd also love to hear from you. You can leave feedback on Twitter @GatherGeeks or leave us an email, gathergeeks@bizbash.com. We hope you'll join us again for the next episode of Gather Geeks. Until then, gather on.